Sis, what's the word? Yup, the kids are doing good. They're taking a little nap right now. What about yours? That's nice. And listen, girl, the date was nothing to write home about. Nice enough guy, terrible kisser though. Let me tell you. And look, he took me to the Other World exhibit in Philly, right? Then he took me to Nebraska, but instead of going to the Nebraska in Philly, we went to one in Horsham. And let me tell you something. The one in Horsham does not have the bread or the spread. Yes. A moment of silence for the bread and the spread because I tell you, I can feel your heart crying out for me. I was hurt, okay? And he did notice, but I tried to play it off because he's spending his bread. So again, what do I look like complaining about the lack of bread? But sis, after we wrap it up, we go to the movies, right? And we go to see ISGODIS. And sis, when I tell you, of course I thought of my little sister. Wait, you got a little sister too? Nuh-uh, she 34 years old? Girl, I'm 34. Wait, I thought we were the same age. How old are you? Wow, that's crazy. My little sister is 32. So you got 2 years between you and your sister. I got 2 years between me and my sister. What? Girl, honestly, I don't know how she is. We don't speak, but that's ASAP. Look, the movie follows twin sisters that are simply trying to survive, all right? The sisters are disfigured from an incident in their childhood that they, at the time, have no larger context for. They'd be placed into foster care after the fire, and for all they knew, both of their parents were dead. A letter arrives in the mail one day. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. I wonder who it's from. Mama! Mama! Mother, a woman they hadn't spoken to for decades and assumed was dead, had written them a letter. The shorter sister, the Spitfire, her character is named Racine, and she wasn't so badly burnt by the fire, described as the rough one who still got some pretty to her. And Anaya was taller, and unfortunately, she was deeply burned by the fire. She had a face that appeared melted and then frozen. The letter was addressed to Racine, and it's a point of contention for Anaya. Why was she left out? Sis, I want you to clock it. Just clock the little things, right? The assumption is that she, Anaya, is too emotional. To me, it wasn't emotion, but her intuition. Not only did they not know their mother, now out of the blue, she needs them at her side immediately. There is more than enough reason for Anaya to be skeptical. Racine, though, Racine sees it as an opportunity, right? They don't got no jobs because they got fired at the start of the film. They don't have a purpose. It doesn't seem like they have any dreams of their own. So, since they're just surviving, since life is just living them, Racine wants to take this opportunity to live life. So she encourages Anaya, despite her objections, that they should go. Anaya, very big, very much big sister coded, despite them being twins, is like, why is she reaching out now? If she's been alive all this time, where has she been? What was she doing? Why wasn't she being their mother? You know what I mean? Like common sense, okay? I had these same thoughts about my own mother at one point in time, and the answers weren't pleasant. Mine? Girl, mine, Moose was busy chasing men and getting high. But anyway, back to the twins. They had to find out, and after much debate, they decide to make the trip. When they arrive at Mother's house, there's a door, and on the door, there's a sign, okay? It has their names, but Anaya's wasn't spelt right. I bet you she was thinking, whose dyslexic ass Put this shit up here. She makes a comment to Racine, but Racine doesn't give much of a fuck and brushes it off because her shit is straight. Pay attention. They enter together hand in hand. Anaya falls back into the foreground, but Racine hops right into the chair by Mother's side and doesn't waste much time. She's direct. She wants to know what happened and why they are all disfigured. Mother goes on to explain domestic violence. She had a restraining order against their father, and he still appeared. He wasn't done tormenting and torturing that woman. And when he came back, he drenched her with liquor, brought the girls to her side, dropped a match, and bounced. He really said, I think that you should let it burn when the feeling ain't the same and your body don't want to. But you know, gotta let it go, 'cause the party ain't jumping like it used to. Even though this might bruise you, let it burn, let it burn, let it burn, let them burn, because that nigga is sick in the brain, okay? Mind you, mind you, Racine doesn't remember any of this, but Anaya does. Anaya can't forget, and she desperately wants to process, to unpack with her mother. Anaya wants to be seen. However, Mother said, to the left, all your trauma in a box to the left. Because Mother has plans for their lives, girl, because they are hers. She created them, and so therefore she owns them in a sense. The trauma they experienced bonds them. Instead of healing, instead of unpacking like Anaya wants to do, Mother puts retribution on the table and is hot and ready like a Little Caesars. Pizza, pizza. Girl. And they got terrible ass pizza. So let me tell you that. Look, Racine is ready to rock and roll, okay? She is going to find their father and get payback. Where are we going? To kill our dad. Where are we going? To kill our dad. Where are we going? To kill our dad. Where are we going? Brat, brat, brat. To kill our dad. Dun, 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 dun. To kill our dad. Yeah. But listen. He did this, right? He is the reason for all of their suffering, right? Old daddy done swiped their futures. And like I said, it's time to pull out the map and pull out the strap. Brat. Yes, I know I was supposed to be a comedian in another life. I know that, sis. But Anaya, she's on another page, okay? Anaya saw how they were a means to an end. Like, be so fucking for real, Racine. Y'all don't know that woman. They mama just popped up and was like, here, murk your dad for me real quick before I die. Hold up, bitch, excuse me. You got me screwed, chopped, and screwed. When our mother returned to our lives, it wasn't because she wanted to. See, when my mother came back, she had to. And because she had to be responsible, she had to play her role. She did give birth to us after all. Much like Racine, my sister was clearly favored, but it was superficial. It was because Racine wasn't able to think for herself and relied on Mother to do that for her. A fate that would unfortunately befall my mother upon her re-entering our lives. Prior to our mother's return, we were both content being cared for by our great-grandmother. We were close, we were loved. Like Anaya, I was doubtful. I questioned everything. I wanted to know why. Later, I'd learn in therapy that the why doesn't have to matter. Life is random. Life is unfair. It is what it is, and you move on with your life. Our mother was random, unpredictable. Why did she treat us so? At that time, I had no idea. And I'd be in a mental prison, unable to ask, to process, to heal. Everything in a box to the left. Despite being unwanted by our mother, we were here. Our mother, her name was Juanita. Locally, she was known as Moose. No, girl, not Mother Moose. You talking about some Mother Goose. Listen, I like to refer to her as the big bad moose. I'd been told tales by so many. She was beautiful, a Scrabble master. She played football at PW High. She was a sight to behold. Being clean for I'm not sure how long, but assumed was most of her time in prison and a few years after she got out. She returned to fanfare. Because my mother's myths were largely unknown to me, I couldn't understand how she knew someone everywhere we went. The lifestyle. The lifestyle is the cause, and I'd learned this later in life, but then I wasn't familiar with what it meant. When I asked her to share stories about her life, she simply refused to talk about anything. I couldn't speak to her about any problems. She would immediately stop me and tell me to write her a letter, a remnant of her time in prison. The fire that burned me and my sister was the death of our great grandmother. I was 8 and she was 6 at the time. Again, while I was working on my memoir, I stopped to reflect on our ages. She was only 6. My sister very likely lacked true memories of our time with our great grandmother. Perhaps her first memories are truly when the God we'd yet to meet, Moose, entered into our lives. I was heading into 2nd grade and my sister into kindergarten. Suddenly, under Moose, my sister would be transformed. Another fire would occur, a fire that would wreak havoc in her life for decades. We lived in an apartment on Hector Street in Conshohocken. This was our second apartment with Moose and her then husband, the father to my first set of brothers. The fire was set off by grease. My Aunt Chablis was frying some chicken. Who knows why they put the only door in and out right next to the stove, but me and my younger cousin were trapped inside. Girl, yes, she is alive. Thank God. I swear it was my cousin Taya. I pray for that girl hard. But sis, ASAP, okay? Long story short, due to the fire, we would find ourselves moving to Narstown. This was our first big move. We initially would be on Markley Street, down from what would later be my middle school, Eisenhower. Moose would have her first living son, Raymond Jr., and was pregnant with her next son, Julius. These are my first set of brothers. We did not have enough room on Markley with just 2 rooms, so eventually we would meet with her father, our grandfather. Sis, we also met our first cousin on that side, Brianna, who was quick to tell us both that he was her grandfather. She wasn't wrong. I fell out with her because she didn't want to acknowledge that she needed help. Girl calling me 5 in the morning, crying about not wanting to live, but I'm trying to ruin her relationship with her grandfather by telling him that she was struggling, that I was struggling, that honestly everyone was. Listen, I was never fighting over him. I'd more frequently be at odds with him than anything else, but I do hope she's well. Girl, that was like the summer of 2022 after I left my baby father. That is another story for another time. But child, so listen, a check would appear and so much life would happen, but a check changed everything for my sister. In hindsight, I remember all the visits, specialists, and more. She struggled with wetting the bed. That was her only issue. That's the only issue I knew of truly. And what's interesting is that she didn't start wetting the bed until Moose Moose entered our lives. At this point, we're now living on Powell Street. And no, 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 sis. It wasn't a settlement check. It was a Social Security disability check. Right, right. See. Now you're tracking me. Everyone was diagnosed with ADHD and ADD then. I remember hearing from a few people how they were lucky their parents got them those checks because they always had something to fall back on. It's more of a crutch than anything else for more people. But back to my sister. Moose sat me down when she got that check to explain why my sister would be getting extra and more because of it. Because she isn't like me. What the extra was unseen to me. Moose got that check and it would be her demise and my sister's in large part as well. Despite all of the lectures and monologues, my mother would go on about how my sister needed extra support, love, and care. Funny, the person that was giving it to her was me. I'd spend so much time with my sister because Moose was preoccupied with her relationship to who she wanted us to regard as our father. I didn't know Raymond at all, and the dynamic when they were together was never one of ease or peace. I'd learned from Moose that a relationship was what really mattered. Through her actions, she'd eventually leave us again for a man, seeking love in all the wrong places. Unloved she was, so she had none for us, unless we were performing or productive for her. Me and my sister would follow suit in our relationships. Yeezy taught me. My sister, I was her keeper. In the apartment that burned down on Hector Street, I would read to my baby. I'd tease her as she begged for another book. I'd open a book and begin, "Once upon a time, the end." I'd joke and slam it shut. "No, please, please, Shar," she would beg, and I always obliged. I loved my sister, and she loved me. We did so much together. We shared secrets, we shared memories, we shared trauma. Trauma so deep that she couldn't see. She was placed on so many medications it would make your head spin. There is a wall I'm about to hit, sis, because when my reality of these memories come into understanding, I can't unsee it. Moose, our mother, over the course of about 4 years, medicated, silenced, and erased her future. My sister, a child, her child, she used her as a means to an end, a tool. My sister would be in and out of short and long term facilities made to help her. My sister was being placed into a system, and my mother was facilitating it. The medications did not stop. The stays grew longer. Her bunk bed would be empty and I'd be alone, alone in a house with two adults that were strangers. We grew up in a church and I would pray for my sister. Girl, I still do. That she would come home and we would be us again. My sister was my first fan. I tried so hard to save her, to remove her from the cycle I saw and didn't understand. I'd look up her medications when I got older and was so disturbed. There were many times my mother didn't pick up the medications on time and she lapsed. Something you shouldn't do on antipsychotics, sis. Something that every adult responsible for her care would do at one point or another. These medications were for depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, and borderline personalities disorders. Girl, she was a child. All that was ever said to me was that she had ADHD, but The medications were saying otherwise. I remember this so well because I'd speak up to my Aunt Chablis, an adult caring for her, and say as much. She shouldn't be lapsing on these. And I was told that she was lapsing on them due to my aunt not having a car and issues with her fiance. They were allegedly doing their best. Our God, Moose, in all her infinite power and wisdom, set this in motion, and the wall I hit is that in the end, it was all for a check. Moose was a hustler and knew how to speak in such a way that you'd be convinced of almost anything. Our God was a swindler. Much like the mother in the film, instead of coming together with her daughters to heal, she sent them out on a mission. Our mission was to make Moose look good, to make her appear as if she was a mother. I improved her image by being clever and responsible, traits I was told later came from her. Bitch, please. Listen, and my sister improved her image by being the one that was given a little extra, by being infantilized. Poor Chikara. Mommy's here for you. Moose would be given so much by her father and by other members of our family because of this. He believed in her fallacy of family so much so that she was given a house, the house on Powell. See, Moose had told me she was a product of her environment. Moose made me believe that in her youth, she had gone through a variety of traumatizing experiences, and then she found herself cycling through the prison industrial complex. I almost repeated the same cycle. I empathized with her deeply until I had my own children. Until I had to fight tooth and nail to keep the rights to my own children. Girl, that's ASAT. But let me tell you this. See, Moose was a lion son of a bitch. Moose was never burned or traumatized by some major life event like she alluded to later on in her life after she was on the run. No. Those stories were ways to manipulate us, me, into continuing on with the mission to improve her image through our successes, through the lives of children she never wanted or cared for. Moose was the first of my grandmother's children, Bunny. Bunny was my grandmother's nickname. I learned that Moose was spoiled rotten. Bunny never married my grandfather, but my grandfather was around and was helping to provide for them. This was news to me. I thought we both had experienced parentification. Girl, a hard word to say. Parentification. I thought we both experienced parentification. Meanwhile, she had both parents, a family, a community. Moose had a good life until she decided to step out at 16. Moose knew it all and wanted to go her own way. I was told that one day on Elm Street, Moose and my grandmother Bunny were getting into it. Apparently, Moose called her mother a bitch. Well, instead of striking her down where she stood, like my great uncle Ronnie had told my grandmother, no, my grandmother allowed my mother to continue to grow her ego, her mythos. Moose received help. People tried to get her off the streets. She did not want to stop and wouldn't until she was placed into prison. A prison that we would later visit with our grandmother. our great-grandmother, okay? That prison was the only reason she was clean. But I didn't know that then. I didn't know that moving to Norristown, her old stomping grounds, would be the spark that restarted her addiction engine. By being given that house to care for her family, she set herself up for failure, sis, okay? Moose lost her job working at Bluebell Place, an elderly home. She said it was because they ran a background check or something like that, and it finally came back, right? But due to her record, she lost her job. Funny, I was told later by my grandfather that he had paid to get her record expunged to avoid this. The spark was being stoked, and the next thing I knew, the rug had been pulled from beneath our feet. I woke up one day in the midst of her storm and she was gone. I'll never forget it. By this point in time, our house was in complete disarray, something difficult to grasp when our house was known as the Kool-Aid house. I waited. We waited. She might come back, and I assumed she would. I should have known better. She wasn't a mother. She never was and never wanted to be. I went down the block to Jules to get us some burgers because the fridge was empty. Before going back home, I decided to stop by the payphone outside of the Golden Dragon and make a call. It was to my grandma. I sobbed into the receiver and left a message. Moose was gone, and we were all alone. Someone would eventually come for us later. The next morning, we woke up at my grandmother's to voices and the scent of scrapple. I hated that stuff. We went down to join their morning routine while they discussed us and what to do. Someone decided to check the voicemail. It was my message, and it played in its entirety. It was painful, and my sister had an interesting response. "You're scared, Shar. You sound scared and you're crying," she said through her laughter. I was taken aback, and I don't believe I responded because I was shocked. Today, I wonder if it was that cocktail of drugs she'd been on and off of altering her perception. It'd be worse than that. No, she believed. Because her memories began with my mother, she had faith that she would return. She would be stuck worshiping at my mother's altar, and she would have to have it beaten from her. The belief that she would return. But Moose never would truly return. She'd make appearances, cause more trouble, and leave more children behind. Moose would attempt to reignite our fires for the mission so she could use us and those around her more efficiently. As long as she was fighting to get her family back, someone was always willing to give her a handout. Throughout the film, the twins encounter people involved indirectly with Mother's suffering, and they die, largely at the hands of Racine. In conclusion, the film ISGODIS ends with Racine dying to avenge their mother, to eliminate the source of their suffering. Anaya, in all her wisdom, she knew better, and she survives. Several times throughout the film, she wanted to put an end to the crusade, but Racine refused. Anaya understood that she was just spreading fire, a fire that lived largely within their mother. Sis, when I reflect on the time me and my sister had with Moose, it was so brief. I'd say about 4 years. The fire that disfigured the twins happened to them when they were around 5, so they didn't actually have much time or knowledge of their mother, like me and my sister. Their mother didn't want to know them, and in return, they weren't given permission to know their mother. All they were allowed to know was the trauma. Just like Moose didn't want to be known by us. She didn't want us to know her. She just wanted to use us. Something that became clear to me as I was helping her wife, Roxanne. Roxanne had several surgeries and is effectively bedridden. Girl, this woman hadn't taken a true shower since February, and at this point, it was May. Yes, you damn Skippy. Yup. I got her inside to take a shower. I brought her to my apartment. It was hard. She fell, and I gotta tell you, I'm blessed to have good neighbors that came to help us out. I got her inside, and after she was done washing, I began to lotion her. Shar, I always thought you hated me, she said. Girl, listen, I had to tell this woman that no, I don't hate you. I hate my mother. That's why I didn't go to your wedding. She broke one of your ribs. Hold up, hold up, hold up. And that's when I realized, as a survivor of domestic violence, there is a truth we often refuse to acknowledge, and it prevents true healing and growth. She is choosing to stay for whatever reason. She is staying underneath the devil, and the only one keeping her there is herself. She is choosing to slowly die by drinking her day away, by sitting around in dark motel rooms, by peeing in a portable urinal, and because she can't remove that urine herself, she's scooping cat litter into it, tying the bags, and then putting it into a larger trash can for somebody else to deal with. I said, listen, I cannot subject myself to such depravity, okay? Despite wanting to have family with Moose, Moose is not a mother. Moose is not a grandmother. Roxanne is not a mother. Roxanne is not a grandmother. These are two women who have largely decided to reject everyone else and use each other. Use each other until they die. I recognize that I was interfering in a process that needed to run its course. You see, some curses end only in death. And I recognize that through her behaviors, she was killing herself slowly. That the family I was seeking, I had been blessed, so blessed to have, and I needed to let them go. Moose had so many chances in her life to get it right. She had financial support from her father, who would go on to start and still owns the largest minority-owned CPA firm in Philadelphia. Moose was my grandmother's first child. I know or imagine that she felt tremendous guilt viewing her daughter's choices as her own fault. She failed to recognize that Moose decided to throw her life away. And Moose's refusal to heal prevented her from trying to help us heal from her absence, from her actions, from the fire that she spread from herself to me and my sister. Look, sis, we would go around spreading that same fire to others, unaware of the source, right? Like Racine, she just picked up the mantle that her mother gave her and started running. Me and my sister, as I've said before, we've done the same. But see, unlike Racine, unlike my sister, I refuse to be consumed by those flames. I must heal. It is revealed that Anaya is pregnant, and we see her in a field happily with her child at the end of the film. Despite being visibly burned on the outside, she, during all of her moments of silence, wanted or not, found peace. She was beginning her own life and carrying one too. Sis, to bring this full circle, I was having a conversation with Roxanne about their finances. You see, she told me that Moose was making about $1,400 a week. It ain't chump change. And like Roxanne was bringing in, a check. Yes, girl. Yes. She is bringing in a check, a Social Security check, a nice old form of stability. And now it clicks. It clicks that every time my mother was complaining about how she wanted to leave her, how she was nothing but a burden, she is a means to an end. Moose is always switching jobs. She's always getting into some kind of accident. There's an unfortunate story that always pops up in Moose's life. Moose is a victim victimizing other people. I realize that I've got to let that go, or I will be burned. I will be consumed. Yes, girl. What is the lesson here? Sis, we got some healing to do. But look, I better get up off of this phone so I can check on the kids. You and I are gonna get together because I've got some prompts for you, okay, girl? Look, we're gonna do some healing together. Are you ready? Perfect. I'm glad you're on board. Look, I love you so much. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Au revoir, sis.